Welcome to The Social Lens. I'm your host, Beatrice Goodwin, and today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating yet overlooked aspects of modern work life: emotional labor. But this isn't just another workplace buzzword. This is about the invisible work that shapes every interaction, every relationship, and every smile you see in the service industry and beyond. Imagine this. You walk into an airport in 1960, and a stewardess greets you with a radiant smile. That smile? It wasn't just politeness. It was her job, literally written into her contract. Today we'll explore how that smile became the foundation of an entire field of study, and why understanding emotional labor might just change how you see the world around you. Let's travel back to 1983. Sociologist Arlie Russell Hochschild is watching flight attendants, then called stewardesses, and she notices something profound. These women aren't just serving drinks and ensuring safety, they're performing emotional choreography at 30,000 feet. Hochschild coined the term emotional labor to describe what she saw: the regulation of feelings to create a publicly observable facial and bodily display. But here's what's fascinating. The airlines knew this was happening long before academia caught up. Picture this advertisement from United Airlines. A stewardess testing baby milk on her forearm, followed by the tagline, "Enjoy yourself and watch her smile." The ad boasted that all 2,769 of their stewardesses bore genuine smiles. No fake expressions allowed. Pacific Southwest Airlines took it even further with a smile inspector who evaluated crew expressions on television, awarding a daily Smile of the Day. They literally painted smiles on their airplane noses. The message was clear. Happiness wasn't just encouraged, it was the product. But Delta Airlines tried a different approach. Their ad featured Carol Koberline, a real stewardess, not a model, walking down the aisle with the tagline, "No floor show, just a working girl working." They emphasized authenticity while simultaneously making the emotional work invisible. And then came National Airlines, with perhaps the most controversial campaign in aviation history. "I'm Cheryl, fly me." They painted flight attendants' names on aircraft, turning women into branded experiences. The emotional labor wasn't just expected, it was marketed as effortless, natural, feminine charm. Here's the genius and the tragedy. The less this work appeared as legitimate labor, the more airlines could convince everyone, passengers, executives, even the women themselves, that it wasn't really work at all. Just young women having fun in short skirts before settling down to marriage, with no need for serious benefits or career advancement. Now that we understand where emotional labor comes from, let's dive into how it actually works. Because it turns out, there are fundamentally different ways to perform emotional labor, and they have drastically different effects on the people doing it. First, there's what researchers call surface acting. This is the classic fake it till you make it approach. You're having the worst day of your life, but you plaster on that customer service smile and speak in that artificially cheerful voice. You're essentially wearing an emotional mask, creating what psychologists call emotional dissonance, a gap between how you really feel and what you're displaying. Surface acting is exhausting. It's like being an actor who never gets to leave the stage. Studies show that people who consistently engage in surface acting experience higher levels of emotional exhaustion, decreased job satisfaction, and are more likely to quit their jobs. They feel inauthentic, disconnected from their work, and frankly, burned out. But here's where it gets interesting. Surface acting isn't random. Certain personality types are more prone to it. High self-monitors, people who are naturally good at reading social cues and adapting their behavior, tend to surface act more. So do people with high negative affectivity, those who frequently experience emotions like sadness and low energy. Surprisingly, people with high emotional intelligence also engage in more surface acting. You'd think being emotionally intelligent would help, but it turns out that understanding emotions doesn't necessarily make performing fake ones any easier. Now let's talk about deep acting, the psychological cousin of surface acting, but with a twist. Instead of just changing your external expression, deep acting involves actually working to change your internal emotional state. Picture a customer service representative who, instead of just forcing a smile, actively recalls a pleasant memory to generate genuine feelings of happiness. They're not just performing friendliness, they're cultivating it from within. The results are remarkable. Employees who practice deep acting maintain a sense of authenticity. They experience less emotional exhaustion and report higher levels of personal accomplishment and job satisfaction. They're not wearing a mask. They're temporarily becoming the person the job requires. But here's the catch. Emotional labor isn't one size fits all. A grocery store clerk is expected to be cheerful and friendly, while a funeral director must convey solemnity and reflection. The same emotional performance that works in one context would be completely inappropriate in another. Here's where our story takes an unexpected turn. While researchers were busy studying flight attendants and customer service representatives, something fascinating was happening in the music world that would challenge everything we thought we knew about emotional labor. Musicians, it turns out, don't just perform emotional labor. They perform something even more complex, relational labor. And understanding this distinction is crucial. Think about your favorite musician. When they interact with fans on social media, perform at concerts, or share personal stories, they're not just managing emotions, they're building and maintaining relationships. They're creating what researchers call ongoing communicative constructs. Relational labor goes far beyond emotional labor. It includes the act of communication itself, the time and effort required to learn new platforms and technologies, the continuous interpretation needed to understand audiences, crafting communication strategies, establishing boundaries, and constantly re-evaluating these elements as each interaction introduces new dynamics. But here's what makes musicians' relational labor unique. They're gig workers operating without the organizational rules and norms that typically govern emotional labor. There's no corporate handbook telling them how to manage fan relationships. They're navigating uncharted territory, developing their own emotional and relational boundaries. Even more fascinating, musicians don't just engage in one-on-one emotional labor. They perform relational labor with crowds, complex networks of individuals with varying relationships to the artist. They must address the relational needs of devoted fans, casual listeners, critics, and complete strangers, all simultaneously. This is relationship building on steroids. It's not just about displaying the right emotion, it's about nurturing genuine connections over time, allowing audiences to understand them while they work, to understand their audiences. The concept comes from Italian volunteers who called their work lavoro relazionale, relational work aimed at rebuilding social ties that might resemble or even substitute paid work. It's about creating structures that sustain continued effort and connection. Now we venture into perhaps the most complex and controversial application of emotional labor theory: sex work. And before you think this is a detour, stay with me. This reveals something profound about how emotional labor operates in its most extreme form. The traditional view of sex work focused purely on physical services, but contemporary research reveals something more nuanced. Many clients aren't just seeking physical encounters. They're purchasing what's marketed as the girlfriend experience, or GFE. Browse any escort advertisement, and you'll see promises like a true girlfriend experience without the headache, or less of a business transaction, and more like a date with the woman of your dreams. This isn't about sex. It's about intimacy, companionship, and emotional connection. Here's where Hochschild's emotional labor theory becomes fascinating. Sex workers engaging in GFE aren't just performing sexual excitement, they're creating what researchers call an illusion of intimacy. They're using emotional labor to construct a fantasy of genuine care and attraction. But here's the psychological complexity. Both parties understand this is a constructed reality, yet they participate in maintaining the illusion. The client pays for the fantasy and is relieved of any obligation to reciprocate the displayed intimacy. Yet, paradoxically, many clients do share personal stories and develop genuine feelings. This creates what researchers describe as a shared fantasy, where the worker's care and attraction are perceived as real, even while both parties know it's professional performance. It's emotional labor at its most sophisticated, maintaining authenticity while acknowledging artifice. The pricing structure reveals the emotional hierarchy at work. Call girls and escorts, who charge more than street-level sex workers, provide longer interactions in environments that better facilitate expressions of intimacy through conversation, touch, and companionship. Higher prices don't just buy more time, they buy more emotional engagement. This commercialization of intimacy isn't unique to sex work. We see it in psychotherapy, therapeutic massage, even in the stereotypical caring bartender who listens to problems over drinks. Each profession operates on a spectrum of perceived genuine concern, with therapists at the high end and bartenders at the low end. As we near the end of our journey, let's step back and see the bigger picture. Emotional labor isn't just about individual jobs or industries. It's become the hidden architecture of modern work life. Every relationship requires work, but relational labor specifically refers to work performed as part of a job or in hopes of securing one. This distinction matters because it reveals how our economy has fundamentally shifted toward relationship-based value creation. Consider the range of professions now built on relational labor: mentoring, teaching, care work, and the often invisible work women do in romantic and domestic relationships. These aren't exceptions. They're the new normal. But here's what's remarkable about our current moment. Unlike traditional emotional labor, which was governed by organizational rules and corporate training, much of today's relational labor happens in unstructured environments. Social media influencers, freelance creatives, gig economy workers. They're all performing relational labor without institutional support or clear boundaries. The research shows us that how we perform this emotional and relational work matters enormously. Surface acting, that fake-it-till-you-make-it approach, leads to burnout, inauthenticity, and job dissatisfaction. Deep acting, genuinely aligning our internal emotions with our external expressions, creates sustainability and satisfaction. This has profound implications for how we design work, manage teams, and think about well-being in the modern economy. Understanding emotional labor isn't just academic curiosity. It's essential for navigating a world where relationships, emotions, and authentic connections have become the foundation of economic value. So where does this leave us? As we've seen, emotional labor has evolved from flight attendant smiles to complex relational work performed across industries. But the fundamental questions remain. How do we maintain authenticity while meeting professional demands? How do we protect workers from the burnout that comes with emotional performance? And how do we value work that has traditionally been invisible? The answer lies in recognition and intentionality. When we understand that emotional labor is real work, requiring skills, energy, and causing genuine fatigue, we can begin to support it properly. This means training that goes beyond smile more to genuine emotional intelligence development. It means creating organizational cultures that value authenticity over performance. And it means acknowledging that in our increasingly connected world, relational labor isn't a soft skill, it's essential infrastructure. The musicians building direct relationships with fans, the sex workers navigating complex emotional territories, the service workers managing their authentic selves while meeting customer expectations. They're all pioneers in an economy where hearts and minds are as valuable as hands and machines. As we move forward, the organizations and individuals who understand this shift, who can perform emotional and relational labor sustainably and authentically, will thrive. Those who ignore it will find themselves left behind, wondering why their perfectly functional products or services aren't connecting with increasingly relationship-hungry audiences. The work of hearts isn't going anywhere. It's time we learn to do it well. That's our deep dive into the hidden world of emotional labor. From 1960s stewardesses to modern musicians, from surface acting to relational labor, from corporate policies to the intimate economy. But wait, we've barely touched the surface of this unique yet deeply shared experience called emotional labor. There's more to every genuine smile you see and every connection you make. There's more behind it. The question isn't whether we'll do emotional labor, but whether we'll do it consciously, sustainably, and with full recognition of its value. Wondering what lie behind this? Head on to the Skoob app now and get access to the full podcast about emotional labor. Download the app now from App Store or Play Store and get going. Thanks for joining me on The Social Lens. I'm your Beatrice Goodwin, and until next time, keep your authentic self close and your emotional labor conscious.